The fluorescent lights of St. Vincent's are flickered like dying stars over another blood-soaked Friday night. Donna D. Howell moved through the chaos, blue scrubs stained from a double shift, dark skin glistening under harsh overhead lighting, exhaustion carved into every movement. 12 years she'd survived this war zone by following one sacred rule: never get involved beyond the scope of her job. Do the work, save the lives, you can go home. Stay safe. Then he walked through those automatic doors. Tomoya Ishihara staggered in, supported by two men in dark suits, one hand pressed hard against his side where blood bloomed across expensive white cotton and a navy blazer that probably cost more than her monthly rent. His face was beautiful, sharp cheekbones, intense dark eyes that swept the ER with predatory awareness despite obvious blood loss. Yakuza tattoos crawled up from his collar like dark secrets etched in ink. The kind of man who made choices that ended lives, who carried violence in the way he held himself even while wounded. Behind him, through the glass doors, red and blue lights multiplied like a virus spreading through the parking lot. Police cruisers. Then tactical vans. Then more. This wasn't a routine arrest. This was a takedown. The ER erupted. Hospital lockdown protocols engaged with mechanical precision. Doors sealing, alarms shrieking, security radios crackling with urgent commands. SWAT officers burst through moments later, weapons drawn, voices sharp and commanding. Tomoya's bodyguards went down hard, faces pressed to blood-slicked tile, handcuffs snapping closed with brutal efficiency. The other patients scattered or froze. And Tomoya Ishihara stood there bleeding, surrounded but not yet taken, his dark eyes scanning the room until they found her. Through the chaos, through the armed officers, through the screaming and the sirens, he looked directly at Donna. Not at the exits. Not at his captured men. At her. His lips didn't move, but she understood with the terrible clarity of 12 years reading dying men's eyes. Help me or watch me die. Behind her, Dr. Patterson was already complying with police orders, directing them to the trauma bay for prisoner transport. Donna knew the protocol. Nearest police-approved hospital was Newark Medical, 23 minutes in Friday night traffic. He'd bleed out before they cleared the parking lot. The bullet wound in his abdomen was seeping too fast, the pallor of his skin screaming internal bleeding, his breathing too shallow. Every instinct screamed at her to look away. To stay invisible. To let the system handle this criminal who'd brought violence into her ER. To protect the quiet, safe life she'd built from nothing. Instead, impossibly, her feet moved toward him. Instead, her hand reached out and gripped his blood-slicked arm. Instead, she whispered the words that would destroy everything she'd ever worked for. Follow me. Now. The security camera mounted in the corner captured it all. The nurse pulling the wounded Mafia boss through the crowd. The supply closet door closing behind them. The moment Donna D. Howell stopped being invisible and became a fugitive. She didn't know it yet. She wouldn't know until 3 hours later, when her face appeared on every news channel in New Jersey with the caption, "Wanted. Accomplice to organized crime." By then she'd be miles away, sitting in a stolen car next to a man who wouldn't let her go. Because if she was caught, she'd give up his location to save herself. And Tomoya Ishihara had survived 12 years in the Yakuza by never, ever gambling with his survival. He'd saved his own life tonight by any means necessary. Even if it meant destroying hers. If you're already hooked by Donna and Tomoya's dangerous journey, show some love by hitting that like button. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss a single chapter of this deadly romance. And drop a comment below. Let me know where in the world you're watching from and whether you think Donna made the right choice saving him. Are you team run and save yourself, or team ride or die together? I'm reading every comment, so don't hold back. The warehouse in Elizabeth smelled like rust and abandonment. Bare concrete stretched in every direction, interrupted only by sleeping bags thrown across the floor, cases of bottled water stacked against crumbling walls, and a card table scattered with burner phones still in their packaging. This was survival stripped to its skeleton. No comfort, no safety, just temporary shelter in a city that wanted them dead or caged. Donna eased Tomoya onto one of the sleeping bags and he hissed through clenched teeth, his expensive suit jacket discarded somewhere between the stolen SUV and this concrete tomb. Blood had soaked through the makeshift bandages she'd applied in the supply closet, seeping dark and wet against his white shirt. His skin burned with fever when she pressed her palm to his forehead. You need antibiotics, she said, her voice sharp with professional authority that felt absurd in this place. Real supplies. This infection will kill you faster than any bullet. Tomoya's eyes flickered open, dark and unfocused. Yuki's coming. As if summoned, the warehouse's side door scraped open. A woman entered, mid-30s, hard-faced, moving with the efficiency of someone who'd seen violence and learned to speak its language. She carried 2 duffel bags and the kind of stillness that made Donna's nursing instincts scream dangerous. You look like hell, boss. Yuki dropped the bags at Donna's feet, her eyes assessing, calculating. And you, she turned to Donna, are either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid. The supplies, Donna said, ignoring the judgment. Yuki unzipped one bag. Antibiotics, surgical thread, proper bandages for equipment. The second bag revealed something else. Stacks of cash, 3 handguns and a burner laptop. The Huangs put out $500,000 for your location. Every street soldier, bounty hunter and desperate criminal in the tri-state area is hunting. You're the most valuable target on the East Coast. Donna's hands stilled over the medical supplies. $500,000. For his location. For their location now. Kenji. Tomoya's voice was rough, feverish. Declaring you compromised. Consolidating power. You can't trust the organization. Yuki's expression softened fractionally. You can't trust anyone except maybe her. She nodded at Donna. And that's only because she's too deep in this to climb out. After Yuki disappeared into the night, Donna worked in tense silence. She started in 4 administered antibiotics, cleaned the wound with proper supplies. Tomoya's fever made him loose-tongued, fragments of truth spilling between moments of delirium. The meeting. Huang's wanted truce. His breathing hitched. Ambushed us. Killed Takashi. Killed all of them. They want the drive. What drive? Donna leaned closer, wiping sweat from his forehead. But he'd slipped back under, murmuring in Korean, names she didn't recognize, apologies to ghosts she'd never meet. She cleaned the wound with steady hands, her face inches from his. The warehouse lights cast harsh shadows across his features. The strong jaw, the tattoos climbing his neck, the vulnerability of unconsciousness. Part of her wanted to hate him for destroying her life. Part of her recognized something in his isolation, his loss, that mirrored her own. When his eyes opened again, clear and present, they stared at each other across the infinite distance of 12 inches. Am I your hostage? The question came out steady, demanding honesty. Tomoya held her gaze, his voice brutally truthful. You're the only person who knows I'm wounded and vulnerable. Until I can trust you won't trade my location for your freedom. His hand caught her wrist, grip weak but insistent. Yes. You're my hostage. The words hung between them, sharp and honest and suffocating. Then sirens cut through the night. Distant but approaching. Multiple vehicles converging on the warehouse district. Tomoya sat up despite the pain, his face hardening into the mask of the man who'd survived 12 years in the underworld. We have 15 minutes. Maybe less. Donna stared at him at the door, at the choice that wasn't really a choice at all. Run with him or wait for the police to find her here, covered in his blood, with no explanation that would save her from prosecution. Then we better move fast, she said, already grabbing the medical supplies. The sirens grew louder, swallowing the night. They moved through Elizabeth's industrial graveyard like wounded animals fleeing the same predator, Tomoya's arm heavy across Donna's shoulders, his blood seeping warm through her scrubs and onto her skin. Each step was agony, his weight threatening to drag them both down as fever made him stumble over railroad tracks and shattered concrete. Her arm locked around his waist, fingers gripping fabric slick with sweat and blood, holding him upright through sheer stubborn will and 12 years of carrying impossible burdens. Keep moving, she hissed through gritted teeth, but it wasn't an order anymore, wasn't the voice of a hostage obeying her captor. Somewhere between the warehouse and this maze of rusted machinery and forgotten dreams, they'd stopped being those things. Now they were just 2 people running from the same death, breathing the same desperate air. The Honda Civic sat in the lot of an abandoned factory, unlocked, keys tucked in the visor like a gift from a careless god or a test from a cruel one. Donna shoved Tomoya into the passenger seat where he collapsed immediately, head lolling against the window, consciousness slipping away with each shallow breath. She stood there in the driver's seat, hands trembling on the steering wheel, staring at the road ahead. He should turn around. Drive to the nearest precinct. Walk in with her hands up and end this insanity before it devoured what remained of her life, before she became something unrecognizable. Instead, impossibly, she started the engine. Highway lights streaked past like falling stars as she crossed into Pennsylvania, one hand white-knuckled on the wheel, the other checking Tomoya's pulse at every red light, too fast, too weak, but steady enough to keep driving. His face in the dashboard glow looked younger somehow, vulnerable, all that predatory intensity stripped away by unconsciousness and blood loss. This stranger who'd demolished everything she'd built with one desperate glance across a blood-soaked ER floor. She kept driving through the night, through her doubts, through every rational thought screaming at her to stop. The roadside inn took cash and didn't ask questions, the kind of place that had seen worse than a woman half-carrying a bleeding man to room 12. Donna locked the door with shaking hands and worked through the endless night while fever raged through him like a forest fire. He thrashed against her careful ministrations, speaking rapid Korean, words she couldn't understand but felt in her bones in her own grief. Apologies to Ghost. Pleas for forgiveness that would never come, cries for fathers who couldn't answer. Dawn bled through cheap curtains, gray and unforgiving as judgment. His eyes opened, clear for the first time in hours, finding her slumped in the chair beside the bed where she'd kept vigil like a guardian or a fool. Why didn't you run? His voice was raw, stripped of manipulation and masks, just honest confusion from a man who understood survival's brutal mathematics. Donna stared at her blood-stained hands, his blood now mixed with all the others she'd tried to save. I don't know. Maybe I'm tired of being the one who survives while everyone else dies. Maybe I'm just tired of surviving instead of living. Something cracked behind his eyes, not softness exactly but recognition. Two people who understood isolation's weight, who carried bodies they couldn't save, who knew that surviving sometimes felt like the cruelest punishment. The television flickered to life, volume assaulting the fragile quiet. Detective Reeves' face filled the screen, grave and determined and righteous. Donna D. Howell is considered armed and dangerous, possibly suffering from Stockholm Syndrome. Then her mother appeared, tears streaming down familiar features, voice breaking with love and desperation. Baby, please come home. Whatever happened, we can fix this. I promise we can fix this. Please. The remote fell from Donna's shaking hand, clattering against cheap carpet. 12 years of building a life, of surviving, of staying invisible and safe, gone in one moment of terrible compassion. Her face crumbled, grief and loss pouring through the cracks she kept sealed for so long, drowning her. Tomoya reached out slowly, his hand finding hers, and turned off the TV with unexpected gentleness. The silence between them felt like falling, like the moment between heartbeats when everything hangs suspended, when two people who should be enemies recognize something too dangerous to name in each other's eyes. 36 hours. That was the rule Tomoya carved into their survival. Never stay anywhere longer, never give death time to find them. They moved like ghosts through Pennsylvania's forgotten places, switching vehicles at truck stops, paying cash at gas stations where cameras had died years ago, sleeping in hunting cabins that smelled of gun oil and decay. Watch the exits, Tomoya said, standing in the doorway of another anonymous room. His fever had broken, but weakness still haunted his movements. Count them. Memorize them. Know 3 ways out before you sit down. Donna studied the space with new eyes, her ER instincts translating to this darker currency. Thus adapt, survive. She'd spent 12 years reading rooms for medical emergencies. Now she read them for ambush points and escape routes. They found Yuki's dead drop behind a dumpster in Scranton, burner phone wrapped in plastic, coordinates for the next exchange scratched on paper. Tomoya's face went cold as he read the message. Kenji declared him dead, absorbed his territory. The Huangs raised the bounty to $750,000. The FBI had joined the hunt. Detective Reeves dominated the evening news, his face carved with false compassion. Miss Howell, we know you're afraid. We're offering immunity if you cooperate. Come home. Home. The word felt like a knife sliding between her ribs. The bounty hunters found them outside Harrisburg. 2 men, hungry-eyed and desperate, blocking the cabin's entrance at dawn. Tomoya shoved Donna into the closet, his body pressed against hers in the darkness, his hand covering her mouth as footsteps creaked through the cabin. She felt his heart slamming against her spine, felt his breath hot on her neck, felt the gun pressed between them ready to kill. The hunters left. The door stayed closed. Neither of them moved. Then Tomoya turned her in the darkness, his hand sliding from her mouth to her jaw, and kissed her with everything they couldn't survive saying aloud. Desperate. Furious. Inevitable. Donna kissed back, her fingers twisting in his shirt, tasting blood and survival and the terrible intimacy of two people who'd stopped pretending this was just captivity. He pulled away first, torment written across his face. This is wrong. You're here because I forced you. I could have run a dozen times. Her voice cut through his guilt like a scalpel. I'm here because I chose to be. Stop treating me like a victim. The words hung between them, brutal and honest and undeniable. They crossed into New York as darkness fell, the city lights spreading before them like a battlefield. Tomoya finally spoke, his voice steady despite everything burning between them. The encrypted drive. It contains evidence that could destroy the Huang's entire operation. Bank records, murder contracts, political payoffs. His eyes found hers in the rearview mirror. It's worth killing 100 people to protect. And we're about to walk into the heart of their territory to use it. Minjun's restaurant smelled like sesame oil and lies. The Korean barbecue joint sat wedged between pawn shops in Albany's Korean district. Windows fogged with steam, the kind of place that looked safe. Tomoya's old friend embraced him at the door, concern etched deep in his weathered face, promising sanctuary and supplies like salvation wrapped in kindness. Donna's instincts screamed wrong, but exhaustion made them both blind. The basement stairs descended into darkness. Minjun gestured them forward, apologies in his voice about keeping things discreet, and Tomoya stepped down first. The lights blazed on, revealing 5 men with guns, Kenji's lieutenant smiling like death in expensive shoes. Nothing personal, Tomoya-san. Just business. The betrayal detonated something primal in Tomoya. He moved like violence given form, disarming the nearest gunman with brutal efficiency, bone cracking as he twisted the man's arm backward. Donna watched frozen as he became the predator she'd only glimpsed, lethal, precise, terrifying in his grace. But numbers overwhelmed skill. One of Kenji's men caught him from behind, forearm crushing against his throat, Tomoya's face purpling as air stopped flowing. Donna grabbed the kitchen knife from the prep table and drove it between the man's ribs. He dropped, choking on his own blood. Tomoya spun, eyes wide with shock, and then they were running, through the kitchen past Minjun's pleading face into the night. They took his BMW, tires screaming as they fled into the darkness, covered in blood that wasn't theirs. The state park was empty, silent except for their ragged breathing. Tomoya sat against a tree, hands shaking, the carefully constructed armor finally shattering. Everyone I trusted chose survival over loyalty. My empire, my brothers, everything. His voice broke on the last word. Donna knelt beside him, this dangerous man reduced to something heartbreakingly human. She held him as he unraveled, as grief and rage poured out in shuddering waves. When he kissed her this time, it wasn't conquest or attraction. It was drowning men reaching for each other in the depths. They made love in the stolen car, desperate and raw, 2 broken people becoming each other's anchor. Her hands traced the tattoos covering his skin, each one a story, a loss, a choice that led him here. His fingers memorized the curve of her spine like she was the last solid thing in a collapsing world. Afterward, breathless in the darkness, he whispered against her hair, "You could have run during the fight. You chose to save me. I guess we're both making terrible decisions." But her fingers laced through his, holding tight. The car radio crackled to life with the morning news. Minjun found executed in his restaurant, single bullet to the head, Kenji's message carved into the wall behind him. Traitors die alone. Donna felt Tomoya's body go rigid against hers, felt the moment he stopped being human and became survival incarnate again. The war had found them. And this time there was nowhere left to run. The abandoned summer camp looked like childhood's corpse. Rotted cabins, a dock collapsing into the lake, silence so complete it felt suffocating. Tomoya set the laptop on a wooden table scarred with decades of carved initials. Lovers' promises turned to ghosts. His fingers hesitated over the keyboard before he opened the files and showed Donna everything. Shipping manifests scrolled past, sterile bureaucratic language concealing human cargo. Women and children reduced to line items, ports of origin, delivery dates. Wire transfers connecting the Huang syndicate to 3 state senators, amounts large enough to buy souls. Surveillance photos of cops shaking hands with Jean Huang's lieutenants, smiling like old friends. And video, grainy security footage of Jean Huang putting a bullet through a rival's skull execution style, his face calm as Sunday morning. 5 years of evidence. A nuclear bomb wrapped in data. This could save hundreds of people, Donna breathed, her nurse's heart breaking over the trafficking manifests. Trafficking victims, corrupted systems. We have to release this. Go public. Force them to act. And become permanent targets. Tomoya's voice was flat, controlled. The moment this goes public, we lose our only leverage. Every criminal we expose will hunt us. Every corrupt cop will want us silenced. We'll spend the rest of our lives running. So we just hold on to it. Use it to save our own skins while those girls suffer. Her voice rose, weeks of fear and tension igniting. You're a coward who only cares about survival. And you're a naive idealist who'll get us both killed. He slammed the laptop shut. You think exposing corruption makes you safe? It makes you a loose end that needs tying up. The second we give this away, we're worthless, and worthless people don't survive. So we do nothing. We just let them. I'm terrified, Donna. The words exploded from him, raw and desperate. I'm terrified that the moment we hand over this evidence, someone, cops, criminals, anyone, will put bullets in our heads to close the file. We're not heroes in this story. We're witnesses who know too much. The confession hung between them, his fear finally naked and visible. Donna's anger drained away, replaced by understanding. She'd spent 12 years in the ER learning that survival and righteousness rarely occupied the same space. She moved closer, her hand finding his. Then we find a middle path. We use this as leverage to negotiate immunity, real protection. We need someone outside this world. A lawyer who can broker a deal. Tomoya studied her face, something like hope flickering in his eyes. Miranda Chin. Civil rights attorney, takes impossible cases, reputation for fighting systems. If anyone would help. Then we reach out. They crafted the message carefully, attaching encrypted samples. Enough evidence to prove legitimacy, not enough to eliminate their leverage. Tomoya's finger hovered over send, the cursor blinking like a heartbeat. If she responds, we have a chance at life, Donna whispered. If she goes to the police, we're finished. His eyes met hers, dark and honest. Last chance to walk away from this. I stopped walking away when I pulled you out of that ear. She pressed his finger down on the key. The message disappeared into the digital void. Somewhere in New York City, Miranda Chen's phone would light up with their last desperate gamble. Either salvation or execution wrapped in an email. They waited in the silence of the dead camp, 2 fugitives betting everything on a stranger's mercy, while the evidence that could destroy empires sat between them like a loaded gun. Miranda Chen's response came at 3 a.m., a single encrypted message that felt like oxygen to drowning lungs. I'll help. Boston. Face-to-face verification required. Come alone. Alone. The word was almost funny. They hadn't been alone since the night Donna destroyed her life in that supply closet. They were bound together now, survival and something darker, something neither could name without making it real. Boston meant crossing state lines, crawling with their faces on every law enforcement database. It meant walking into a city where the Huangs owned docks, restaurants, police precincts. It meant betting everything on a lawyer they'd never met. The journey unraveled them by degrees. A state trooper pulled them over outside Hartford, flashlight beam cutting through the darkness as he examined Donna's fake ID. Her hands didn't shake. 12 years of ER training, staying calm while people bled out. But her heart slammed against her ribs as his radio crackled. Tomoya's hand found hers beneath the dashboard, fingers lacing through hers, silent promise that if this went wrong, they'd go down together. The trooper handed back the ID. Drive safe, ma'am. At a gas station in Worcester, a customer's eyes went wide with recognition, his phone already rising as Tomoya pumped gas. They abandoned the pump mid-fill, tires screaming as they fled, and didn't speak for 20 miles. The silence was worse than fighting. That night, in another anonymous motel, they broke apart and came back together with desperate urgency. Tomoya's hands mapped her body like memorizing something that might disappear, and Donna held him like he was the only solid thing in a world dissolving around them. They made love and fought and apologized and made love again, Two people being ground down by the machinery of their choices. Miranda Chin waited in a parking garage at midnight, sharp-suited and sharp-eyed, reviewing the evidence on an encrypted tablet. Her face remained professionally neutral as she scrolled through trafficking manifests and execution videos, but her jaw tightened. This is authentic. And it's explosive. She looked up, assessing them with a lawyer's precision. Full immunity for you, Ms. Howell, in exchange for testimony about the hospital incident. Reduced charges for Mr. Ishihara, likely 10 years minimum, in exchange for the evidence and testimony against the Huangs. 10 years. The number landed like a fist in Donna's stomach. But federal prosecutors move slowly. Weeks to negotiate terms, establish protection. Until then, Chin handed them an envelope thick with cash and a Vermont address. You survive. Donna saw him first as they walked to the car. A face from the restaurant ambush, Kenji's man, stepping from the shadows with a phone pressed to his ear. Their eyes met across 30 feet of concrete, recognition sparking like a match to gasoline. Run. The car chase shredded through Boston's sleeping streets, gunfire shattering their rear window, Tomoya driving one-handed while returning fire, Donna's scream lost in the engine's roar. They ditched the vehicle in Chinatown and plunged into the subway system, running through maintenance tunnels while sirens multiplied above them like a plague. 3 weeks. Miranda Chin had bought them 3 weeks before the immunity deal would be finalized, before they could step out of the shadows and breathe without checking over their shoulders. In the Vermont farmhouse, surrounded by winter silence and woods that stretched forever, they lived like people who'd almost forgotten they were dying. Donna cooked with whatever supplies Yuki's dead drops provided, canned soup elevated with spices, pasta that tasted like normalcy. Tomoya taught her Korean phrases between kisses, his hands moving through her hair as snow fell outside windows they'd covered with blankets. They made love slow and desperate and tender, memorizing each other like prayers against the inevitable. I was 8 when we left Seoul, Tomoya said one night, bodies tangled in blankets, their breath clouding in the unheated bedroom. My father wanted better for us. America, land of opportunity. His laugh was bitter. He found the Yakuza instead. Built an empire on violence and loyalty. I was 12 when they killed him, shotgun blast in a restaurant while I watched from the bathroom. I spent the next 15 years becoming the thing that killed him, just so I could destroy everyone responsible. Donna traced the tattoos across his chest, each one a gravestone. I lost a patient when I was 23. Teenager, gunshot wound, came in conscious and talking. I promised his mother I'd save him. He coded on my table and I couldn't bring him back. I've been trying to save him ever since, with every patient, every shift. Trying to prove I'm not the person who fails when it matters. You didn't fail him. You failed no one. His fingers caught her chin, forcing her to meet his eyes. You're the woman who saves people even when it costs everything. They imagined futures they had no right to dream. A cabin somewhere no one would find them, mornings that didn't start with checking for assassins, a life that wasn't measured in 36-hour increments. Then Yuki's emergency message shattered their fantasy. Kenji made deal with Jean Huang. Your location for territorial control. Betrayal complete. Reeves tracking Chen's communications. Knows about immunity deal. Plans to arrest on site, deal invalid. You're trapped. The phone fell from Tomoya's hand, clattering against the wooden floor. Donna stood slowly, her face hardening with terrible resolve. I'm turning myself in. Alone. I'll take a plea deal, testify about the hospital, leave you out of it completely. You can disappear with the evidence, use it for leverage somewhere else. No. The word came out flat, absolute. Tomoya, this is the only way. No. He crossed to her, hands gripping her shoulders. You think I'd let you sacrifice yourself after everything? You think I'd run while you face prison for saving my life? One of us should survive this. Then we both survive or we both die. His voice broke on the last word. I love you, Donna. This impossible, fucked up situation created something real between us. Something I didn't think I deserved after everything I've done. So if we're going down, we go down together. The confession hung between them, brutal and honest and irrevocable. Donna's eyes filled, tears cutting tracks down her face. I love you too. God help me, I love you too. They held each other in the dying light, two people who'd found something precious in the rubble of their destroyed lives. Then we forced their hand, Tomoya said finally, pulling back to meet her eyes. We leak our location to Kenji, to Jin Huang, to Detective Reeves. Create chaos. In the confusion, we either walk out with immunity or we don't walk out at all. That's insane. It's the only move left. His smile was sharp, dangerous, the Mafia boss surfacing beneath the man she loved. We've been running. Time to make them chase us into a trap. Donna kissed him hard, tasting desperation and love and the terrible freedom of having nothing left to lose. They began making calls, lighting fires across the eastern seaboard, drawing every enemy and uncertain ally to one location. The end was coming, and they were going to meet it together. Vermont's safe house was a farmhouse bleeding paint and history. They collapsed inside as dawn broke, covered in sweat and fear and each other's blood from where flying glass had cut them. Tomoya pressed his forehead against hers, breathing hard. They're always one step behind us. Eventually they'll be one step ahead. Donna kissed him, tasting desperation and the terrible truth neither wanted to speak. Their luck was running out and love couldn't stop bullets. The Atlantis casino had been dying for years before they finally condemned it. A corpse on the boardwalk, windows boarded with plywood, slot machines gathering dust like tombstones. Perfect for an execution or a resurrection depending on who walked out alive. Tomoya moved through the space with tactical precision, marking exits, sightlines, cover positions. 4 ways out if things went wrong, cameras positioned to capture everything, dead man switch armed and ready. Donna watched him work, this man who'd transformed from bleeding stranger to the person she'd die beside, and felt strangely calm. They'd stopped running. Now they'd make their stand. The messages went out simultaneously. To Kenji offering negotiated surrender of the evidence. To Detective Reeves claiming willingness to turn themselves in. To a journalist with instructions that made their survival everyone's problem. If we don't check in every 6 hours, the full evidence dump goes public. Every dirty cop, every politician, every trafficking route. All of it. 3-way Mexican standoff, and they were the gun everybody wanted pointed somewhere else. Kenji's forces arrived first as darkness swallowed the boardwalk. 24 men in dark suits, spreading through the parking structure and surrounding exits with military efficiency. Then the FBI tactical team, armored vehicles and assault rifles, Detective Reeves' voice crackling through megaphones like the voice of God demanding surrender. Inside the casino, Tomoya checked his weapon for the 10th time. Donna's hands were steady as she chambered a round in the pistol he'd taught her to use. Strange how fear could burn away until only purpose remained. Tomoya Ishihara. Reeves' voice boomed through broken windows. You're surrounded by federal agents. Send Donna Howell out unharmed, surrender the evidence and we can resolve this peacefully. Tomoya keyed the radio they'd left on the casino steps, his voice steady and sharp. Detective Reeves, I have evidence of 12 officers in your jurisdiction on the Huang payroll. Their names are being broadcast to every news station as we speak unless you guarantee our immunity. How many of your men are listening right now wondering if they're on my list? The FBI team fractured like ice under pressure. Shouting through their communications, some demanding they secure the evidence, others wanting to storm the building and eliminate the threat. Chaos breeding in real time. Jin Huang's voice cut through the confusion, barked orders in Korean echoing across the lot. His men surged forward, trying to eliminate Tomoya before the evidence could destroy everything they'd built. The casino exploded into war. Gunfire shredded the darkness. Muzzle flashes strobing through abandoned gaming floors, bullets ripping through ancient slot machines in cascades of sparks and shattered glass. Flashbangs detonated in the old restaurant section, white-hot light and concussive thunder that left ears ringing. 3-way firefight, Huang's forces pressing from the east, FBI from the north, and Tomoya and Donna fighting from the center of the storm. Tomoya moved like death given form, dropping targets with brutal efficiency, but numbers crushed skill. A Huang enforcer flanked them through the poker room, weapon rising toward Tomoya's exposed back. Donna's shot took him in the chest before conscious thought, her ear hands steady even as her mind screamed. They retreated through the parking structure, concrete pillars exploding under automatic fire. FBI rounds clipped Tomoya's shoulder, spinning him sideways. Donna grabbed his jacket and hauled him behind a pillar, her body shielding his as bullets carved chunks from their cover. Stay down. She returned fire blindly, buying seconds. Blood spread across Tomoya's shirt, but his eyes stayed focused. The east exit. is blocked by Huang's men. West exit puts us in FBI crosshairs. Donna's voice was clinical. You're trained to assess impossible situations. We're trapped. The firefight intensified. Huang's men pushed harder, FBI agents closing the noose. Tomoya fired until his magazine clicked empty, then pulled Donna against him as rounds hammered their position. His hand found her face, thumb brushing her cheek with devastating gentleness amid the violence. I need you to know, he started. Don't. Donna kissed him hard, tasting blood and cordite and everything they'd never get to say. We're not done yet. She grabbed his spare weapon, counted their remaining ammunition, 8 rounds, and assessed their odds with the same brutal honesty she'd used triaging patients who wouldn't survive. They had maybe 3 minutes before position became untenable. Then new gunfire erupted from their flank, not aimed at them but at Huang's forces. Yuki emerged from the shadows with 4 men, mowing down Kenji's soldiers with surgical precision. Tomoya's eyes went wide with shock as his former lieutenant fought her way toward them. Northeast stairwell. Yuki shouted over the chaos. Tunnel to the boardwalk. Move now. They ran through smoke and death, Yuki's team providing covering fire as FBI and Huang forces turned on each other in the confusion. The tunnel was narrow, dark, flooding with seawater. Donna's lungs burned as they splashed through knee-deep water, Tomoya's blood leaving dark trails behind them. They burst onto the boardwalk into flashing lights and camera crews. Miranda Chin stood beside federal marshals, her face grim but triumphant. Immunity deal is finalized, she said quickly. But we need to move before anyone decides to renegotiate with bullets. Behind them, the casino burned, three-way war still raging in its corpse. Tomoya leaned heavily against Donna as marshals surrounded them, and she didn't know if they'd survived or just delayed their execution. Jin Huang entered the casino like vengeance incarnate, flanked by his elite guard, his face carved from rage and grief. He'd lost his sister to Tomoya's organization years ago, collateral damage in a territory war, and he'd been waiting for this moment ever since. The grand ballroom became their arena, crystal chandeliers shattered across marble floors like frozen tears, moonlight streaming through broken skylights. You took everything from me, Huang said, his voice cold and precise. Now I take everything from you. They collided in brutal close-quarters combat, Huang's knife flashing silver as Tomoya parried with desperate speed. But Tomoya was wounded, exhausted, blood loss making his movements fractionally slower. Huang's blade caught his ribs, opened his cheek, drove him back against a pillar. Donna raised her weapon but the angle was wrong. She'd hit Tomoya as easily as Huang. Around them, FBI forces closed in but not fast enough. Huang's hand closed around Tomoya's throat, lifting him, the knife poised to end everything. Donna pulled out her phone and hit Livestream. My name is Donna Howell, she said, voice steady as her hands held the camera on Huang. This is Jin Huang, leader of the Huang crime syndicate, about to murder a federal witness. If the FBI doesn't stop him in the next 30 seconds, they're complicit in witness elimination. The world is watching. The stream exploded across social media. Thousands of viewers becoming tens of thousands, news alerts pinging across every phone in the country. Jin Huang, illuminated in her camera's harsh light, became the most visible criminal in America. The FBI had no choice. Tactical teams swarmed the ballroom, flashbangs and commands an overwhelming force. Huang's men went down in controlled chaos. Huang himself, realizing the trap had closed, dropped his knife and raised his hands, his eyes promising Tomoya that death was only delayed, not cancelled. Detective Reeves cornered them in the wreckage, weapon drawn, his face twisted with fury at being outmaneuvered by fugitives and lawyers and viral videos. You think this ends well? You think immunity makes you safe? Miranda Chin stepped into the ballroom flanked by federal prosecutors, holding documents stamped with judicial seals. Immunity agreements, signed by Judge Patricia Morrison. Donna Howell and Tomoya Ishihara are federal witnesses under protection. Lower your weapon, detective, or face obstruction charges. Reeves stared at them with pure hatred, but the law had teeth now. He holstered his weapon and walked away, shoulders rigid with rage. Dawn broke over Atlantic City as ambulances and news crews swarmed the casino like scavengers. Donna and Tomoya sat on the boardwalk steps, watching the sun paint the ocean gold and pink, tasting freedom for the first time in months. It felt fragile, uncertain, like holding water in cupped hands. "We're free," Donna said, but it sounded like a question. "Legally," Tomoya replied, his hand finding hers. "But we'll testify for years. Look over our shoulders forever. Some of Huang's people will never stop hunting. So we survive to spend our lives surviving. Or we survive to spend our lives living." He turned to face her, his damaged face beautiful in the morning light. "With each other." She kissed him as the sun rose higher, two people who'd run through hell and somehow found each other on the other side. 6 months later, Portland rain drummed against the windows of their small apartment. Diana Wright finished her shift at the free clinic and came home to find Marcus Wright cooking dinner, jazz playing softly, their life rebuilt from ashes into something small and precious. The news played in the background. The Huang trafficking trials had resulted in 47 convictions, hundreds of victims freed, networks dismantled. Diana, turned off the TV and crossed to Tomoya, sliding her arms around his waist. "Do you regret it?" he asked quietly. "The hospital decision, the running, everything we lost?" She considered the question honestly, thinking of her old life, her mother's face on that motel TV, the career she'd never returned to. Then she looked at this man who'd become her home, this quiet life they'd built from chaos. "I saved your life that night," she said finally. "And somehow you saved mine." He turned in her arms and kissed her, not desperate or dangerous but tender and true. Outside, Portland rain washed the streets clean, and inside, two people who'd been fugitives learned to be free. Not perfectly safe, never perfectly safe. But together, which made all the difference. They held each other as darkness fell, two broken people who'd become whole, who'd learned that sometimes love is born in chaos and survives because you choose it, every single day despite everything. The choice to keep choosing each other. That was their freedom. That was their future. That was enough. And that's where Donna and Tomoya's story ends. Two fugitives who ran until they found freedom, two broken people who chose each other every single day despite the chaos. But their story isn't the only dangerous romance brewing in the shadows. If you loved this dark, intense journey, smash that like button and subscribe because I've got another explosive story dropping next. Think you've seen Obsession? Wait until you meet the characters in my next video, where the line between protection and possession disappears completely, and love becomes the most dangerous weapon of all. Drop a comment and tell me, did Donna and Tomoya deserve their happy ending? Or should some loves stay in the darkness where they were born?